Hi and welcome back to another video of jPlay, and today it's again time for another top 10. You guys were asking for it, and the response to my latest top 10 videos, what to do in a zombie apocalypse, really was amazing. So I was really intrigued doing another one of these one. And today it's about thematic games. For me, that's kind of a relative term. So for me, thematically could mean anything. It can be a Euro game which has some nice mechanics, or something that's very unique in respect to the theme for a Euro game. Yeah, of course, you are still moving cubes around and whatnot and placing your workers, but still sometimes I think thematically, a Euro game can make sense. And yes, we will look at some of those games today as well. It could be a very beautiful game, simply nice to look at, or overall really a game that tells a story which has a great narrative tied to that. I'm pretty sure most of you or some of you will disagree with some of my picks here, and maybe also we can have a discussion on what thematic actually means. Again, that's my take on this subject, so yeah, bear with me, and I really hope you will enjoy that. And I think with that, let's get started. And yeah, the first game for today indeed is a Euro game, and that's Rococo, and of course it's the deluxe edition. The original game, designed by Matthias Kramer, was already very nice to play. It was not the prettiest game in the game, it was very functional, it still looked nice, so good enough, so don't get me wrong, but really what Ian O'Toole now did to this game, this was simply breathtaking. I'm pretty sure this is one of my most beautiful games in my collection. It doesn't really come cheap, as you know, but again, it's really worth all the components and all the stuff that ships with the game. And if you think about the jewelry box expansion alone, I think this went up to $100, sometimes a little bit more. So I think in this case, this box here, that does include the jewelry box expansion, is almost a bargain or a steal. So yeah, I think this is my number one pick for today. And again, I'm not doing these things in order. I'm not saying that this is my absolute top priority. It's really one of the 10 games I picked for this list. This could be ranking on whatever, position 7 or position 3 or position 2. It really doesn't give you any kind of prioritization. This was simply my first pick when I looked at my shelf. And up next we have the War of the Ring. Obviously you're looking at the German version of the game, but it doesn't really matter too much. And even without the super duper mega deluxeified edition, the core game, I think that's the second edition here, on its own is already very beautiful to look at. Yeah, the minis are not so nice. You could paint them, but yeah, who wants to paint 400 miniatures? I have no clue how many minis are in there, maybe with the expansion. And yes, I was able to play I think it's the collector's edition a couple of times actually. Yes, absolutely adorable to look at, but honestly, I have played this version of the game much more often, and I still enjoy it so much. Everything is so true to the book. Yeah, I know the movies are also very true to the book. At least as true as a movie can be to a book, at least that's my opinion. Yeah, maybe they could have added Tom Bombadil, but that's already, I think, yeah. I really like the movies. I hope I made my point clear here. But I really also like the game. It's my, I think, most favorite two-player game too. Maybe ranking in the same range as Rebellion. But if you really would make me choose, I would always go back to the War of the Ring here. Because again, it's really so true to the franchise, to the books, to the lore. I really enjoy this game a lot. And then there is another masterpiece by Ian O'Toole. No surprise, he made it to my list at least twice, and that's Nemo Swarm. It's also my all-time favorite, I think, solo player game out there. I know you can play it with more than just one player, but yeah, at its core, it's really a solo game. I did feature this on my channel, and I'm really considering to do that again. It's really breathtaking to look at, really. Everything feels, and this is really, for me, that's the core, or that's the heart of a thematic graphic layout in respect to how those ships look, the map look, how the adventure cards are being designed, and all the artwork on these cards. It's really beautiful to look at. It's also very fun to play. Yes, some might say it's a little bit random, but if you watched some of my playthroughs, I'm also a big fan of randomness. Yes, sometimes I do prefer some more games I can plan more, but also I'm total big fan of rolling some actual dice and whatever, drawing random cards and whatnot. And this is, I think, what Nemo Swarm is doing as its best, really giving you a challenge, really something you have to respond to. Yes, you have to adapt some kind of a strategy, but so often in the game you are facing a situation which you simply didn't think of. And then, yeah, you have to deal with that. And that's really something which I enjoy in a game like this. And though that's really no surprise that Nemo Swarm made it on my top 10 list here. Let's move over to another Euro-style kind of game, Obsession. It may not be the most beautiful games in the world, I give you that. But from a thematic perspective and in respect to its, let's say, unique setting, yeah, I already said it, it's really unique. Not a lot of games are able to capture the spirit of shows like Downton Abbey, and I have to confess I'm a very big fan of that show. Don't ask me why, but I simply am. I also covered this game on my channel before using the solo mode. I think I did cheat at the very final round of the game or so. Not sure if that would have changed something, but anyway, I enjoyed every minute of my playthrough. Of course, I'm also played this a couple of times with the normal multiplayer rules. And yeah, it's all about pride, intrigue and prejudice in Victorian England. And I think really it does it so well. The expansion, which I also have, of course, adds nice twists, even more some of those servants, how to use those well. So I think you should definitely grab yourself a copy if you have the base game. Again, it's really not the most beautiful game in the world. Some of those rooms and whatnot, some of those events, yeah, they're very basic. But overall, when you look at it and when you start playing it, you're looking at all those cards and the photographs on this card. I really love those. I'm really a big fan of these old style photographs. Really do the game so good. I really do enjoy this game quite a bit, and I'm pretty sure you should too. And then there is a touch of evil. Some of you might know that I'm a huge fan of Flying Frog Productions, and I really like, I think, basically all of their games. And in the end, I had to make a pick which game of them makes it to my list. It was clear that at least one of those would make it, but I was really here torn between Fortune and Glory and a touch of evil. Personally, I think Fortune and Glory is the better game from a experience perspective, and yeah, I really like this Indiana Jones kind of theme. Again, hopefully I'm not doing any copyright problems here, but I think you know where I'm coming from. But in the end, I really decided for a touch of evil, because when I remember having seen this game for the first time, I think it was a random photo on Board Game Geek. I just saw the board and something automatically drew me towards this, and then I really checked it out, and I think I even watched a playthrough by Kalasmar back then, Johannes. So thanks for that, and he made me aware of this game, or showed me. I mean, I was already aware of this game, but he really showed me the mechanics, and then I was really blown away. So yeah, I think this was really my first Flying Frog production games, which I personally had. I think short after that I also got Fortune and Glory, but I think ultimately that's the main reason why I really picked this one for my top 10 list. If you would ask me 2 weeks from now, maybe I would have changed my mind and say, no, it's absolutely Fortune and Glory. But I think ultimately, I really like the style of this game. This is the perfect game to whatever, pull from your shelf during Halloween. And I think I did a playthrough of that during Halloween times 2 years ago, if I remember that correctly. And I really hope I can do another Halloween playthrough series of A Touch of Evil this year too. So yeah, that's my Flying Frog Productions top 10 thematic game for this list. Let's move on. Up next we have Gloom of Killforth, Shadows of Killforth. Right now my copy of Gloom of Killforth is with a friend, so I have to stick to Shadows of Killforth here. I also recently covered this on my channel, and yeah, this is really one of the games, when you look at those cards, some of those are simply breathtaking, amazing, so lovely piece of artwork. And also how all those components go together, it able to create such a strong narrative. It's really not one of those games where you have a lot of whatever flavor text or narrative to read. Some of those sagas, for example. This is really one of the games which you have to embrace, you have to be open to really go on your own journey and live through all the challenges that your adventurer is challenging or is being challenged in a typical game of Shadows of Killforth. The cool thing about this series is that you can mix and match everything together. Shadows of Killforth, Gloom of Killforth, and I think there is already the next installment on the horizon, I think scheduled for 2022, and I really hope I will get myself a copy here too. But yeah, this is really one of the games which I'm always happy to pull out. I have introduced this game to so many different folks and everyone like it. Of course, yes, you have to have a strong sense, or you want to play these kind of games, obviously. So if I would introduce this game to a whatever standard Agricola player, maybe it may fall flat. But again, for someone who is open, really wants to have this kind of adventure game, I think that's the perfect game for you. And then we have Imperial Struggle. This is pretty much my proof that also a war game can feel very thematic, can look beautiful, and really where the artwork is also supporting the theme, for example. It may not be the most beautiful games out there on the market, but for a war game, and I have seen my fair share of those, this is really, really beautiful to look at. And even when you basically take the war game aspect aside, it's still very beautiful to look at. It's a very cool game, very clever, very deep, very thinky. Yeah, it's kind of Twilight Struggle. Personally, I was never a big fan of Twilight Struggle myself. I played it a couple of times, but in this case, really the theme, Cold War, didn't really do anything for me. But I think now going back a little bit into history, that's more my cup of tea. And this is why I was so looking forward when GMT first announced Imperial Struggle. And as soon I think I could, it was as a P500. No, I think it was a standard pre-order. I cannot remember, but as soon as I was able to pre-order it, I did so, and finally it arrived. And yeah, it's really, really beautiful and really fun to play. And up next, it's Firefly, the game. I really think that no game was ever able to be so true to a franchise on television. Yes, Gale Force 9, they have really a strong history in producing great games that are somewhat based or are based on actual television shows. I mean, we have Firefly, we have Spartacus, we have Homeland, and they're all great games. I think Doctor Who, I shouldn't miss out. And some of those are really heavily underrated, especially Sons of Anarchy, for example. Also Homeland, really so incredibly enjoyable game, but I'm also a big fan of those shows too. But in the end, I had to make a call, and in the end it was Firefly. That's, I think, maybe the reason, because this is, from all those Gale Force 9 thematic games, the most played games in my gaming group. I think even there alone I played it 12 times. I also covered it on my channel at least once. Definitely might consider doing another playthrough of this one here too, sooner or later. But yeah, really, I mean, also you might debate, okay, some of you might not be fans of movie stills, for example. I personally am. I always would prefer a movie still over bad artwork. Yes, there is great artwork out there which has been painted or drawn, but I also know the other way around. Again, my worst example is always the Firefly Legendary box, which is absolutely gruesome, and which is, I simply traded away. It was a fun game, but I couldn't bear to look at it. And this is why I always say, then give me rather somewhat good looking movie stills over really poorly drawn piece of artwork. And yeah, in the end, that's my top 10 pick for Gale Force 9 game, and yeah, it's Firefly. And yeah, then we come to another cooperative game, and that's Robinson Crusoe. Yeah, it's the German version again, so apologies for that, but again, I'm not playing this game to you, I'm just showcasing this to you. And I think with this game, Ignacy really kept his promise and really created a board game that is able to tell stories. Again, for me, the best cooperative game out there. Really nail-biting, very thematic. All those stories, all those scenarios really do make sense. Or some of the expansions like the Beagle sorry, is also able to cover this some kind of a campaign mode, which is something I typically not enjoy so much, but here was really well done. even with this very basic edition of the game. So this is not deluxified in any way. It still has the cube, so I'm not even used these little banana tokens, for example. It's really the very, very basic version of the game. Everything feels incredibly immersive and so enjoyable. You flip this card, you do stuff, something, you shuffle something into the event deck, it might come back to haunt you again. For me, from an experience perspective, definitely my top one kind of cooperative game. Ha! And for my last game, I even had to stand up and pick it from the back of my shelf. And also my camera left me, so I don't know what happened here. But yeah, that's the last game on my list. Last but not least, I must say, it took me some time to really get my head around this one. But I think in the end, I decided to give the last place in my list to Arkham Horror, and it's the second edition. No, it's not Eldritch Horror, it's not the third edition. I'm pretty sure those look, when you look at it with modern eyes, more polished, more streamlined, more professional. But I think that's especially what really has originally drawn me into Arkham Horror, the second edition. I mean, it's this almost Art Nouveau kind of style, which really fits the theme around an H.P. Lovecraft kind of game. Definitely not the most beautiful game in the world. It's very cluttered. The game board looks very old school, but then again, it really makes so much sense that this game looks the way it looks today. So again, in the end, for me, it was no surprise that Arkham Horror 2nd Edition made it to my top 10 list of most thematic games. And I wanted to really have something from H.P. Lovecraft on my list. And there are tons of games that include works of H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm also going to do a playthrough of Arkham Noir, which also has a very nice style on its cards, actually. I'm really looking forward to this one too, but I have to do 1 or 2 training sessions before I really even dare to face the mysteries of this game. But yeah, today it's the second edition of Arkham Horror. I think one of the games I've never covered on my channel before. I played the third edition. Now recently I played Eldritch Horror finally on my German version. I played The Elder Sign as well. Maybe I could consider doing another playthrough of The Elder Sign on my channel here too. But I think sooner or later I should really dare and try my best in a session of Arkham Horror, the second edition. Table space wise, it will get problematic, I know that, and for sure I will not use any sideboards. I think the sideboards are somewhat problematic in this game anyway. At least that's how I feel, because you already have so much stuff to do with the main game board, but some of those, like Dunwich, really add some very nice twists to that. I'm using a lot of the cards that come with all those expansions. I'm not the purest one who is then really separating all these expansions out. I'm really a big fan of shuffling in everything that you have, as far as it made sense. Of course, if there are cards that really only refer to the sideboards, which you're not using, then there is no point in that. But again, ultimately, for me, top 10 H.P. Lovecraft kind of game, it's definitely Arkham Horror, the second edition. And those were my top 10 most thematic games out there. In my introduction, I already gave a brief outline about what thematic means to me. If you disagree, absolutely, by all means, let me know. If you think other games should made it to my list, also would really highly appreciate your comments. Absolutely share your top 10 games with me, or maybe a top 3 or top 5 in respect to how thematic, how beautiful you think those games are. Really looking forward to all of your comments. And huge shout out to all of my patrons. I know I really was considering to do that at the start of my video, but for whatever reason I simply forgot. But here we are again. Thanks so much for all your support. If you want to support me, you will find a link to my page on Patreon. You can join me here directly on YouTube. Like and subscribe. This also tremendously helps. And hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. And until then, bye bye.